Hello again, chess enthusiasts. What I'm about to present to you here is something to which I referred in my recent analysis of problem number 7, because there is a similarity in one of the passages of play. And not only that, I deliberately left this out of the analysis on problem number 6 for one very good reason. I wanted to give you guys out there an opportunity of deciding for yourselves whether in fact I had solved problem number 6 or if in fact it had been cooked. Well, we'll clarify that position now. This is the position in problem number 6. We're revisiting it and we're just reappraising it to get the final piece of the jigsaw. There was one reply by black to white's key move on which I didn't touch. I did sort of touch on it, but I didn't exactly go through it, so we'll go through it now. Let's just revert to the pocket chess set. As you can see, the position is still the same. In fact, the bishop is here, so that's the original position. We decided that the key move is bishop g4. Now that's with the intention of playing bishop f5 and breaking the connection that this rook has on the 5th rank and this bishop has on the b1 to h7 diagonal. Now, just looking at this position, during the course of my analysis, I said around here wouldn't make any difference. And I mentioned moving this bishop here wouldn't, because you just play bishop to f5. And then if black were to take the knight, the process of rook d5 or knight on f to d3 would come into play. I'll just go through this again just very briefly. So if he were to go there, you just play bishop f5. And then, of course, if the rook takes, it's knight f to d3, and that is mate because it's breaking the connection. Equally, if the bishop were to take here, then it will be rook d5 mate, because again the connection is broken. So there's no problem with either of those. And after bishop f5, of course, if black were to whip this knight off, trying to stop knight on f to d3, it would still be rook d5 mate. So that stands. However, there is another move. So after bishop to g4, instead of bishop g3, I did say it wouldn't make any difference if this knight moved. Well, clearly it wouldn't make any difference if it moved here, because it would be knight e6 mate, it's breaking the chain where the rook controls e6. And it wouldn't make any difference here, because white could go ahead and play bishop f5. And the same rule applies. Indeed, you could even take the knight, and as will be explained, there is a mating net that way as well. But what does cause concern, as some of you may have noticed, is if black plays knight h3, what happens then? Can we play bishop f5? Well, let's try it. If you play bishop f5, he takes the bishop, knight f d3, fine. If he takes the bishop here with the bishop, you play rook d5. What is rather a nuisance though is if black plays here. What do we do then? We've no knight to play from knight to f to d3. This diagonal b1 h7 being blocked. And we now can't play rook d5 because the knight would stop it. So what that means is that bishop f5 doesn't work in that situation. So what do we do then? Let's put these back for a moment. Take another look at it. What else is there? Bishop f5 doesn't work because of knight takes f4. That is a very sneaky move, I'll agree with you, if anyone's thinking that. And there's a very good reason that I didn't explain this the first time around, and I'll show you why in a moment. There's another move that comes to mind, bishop e6. Now this is the square that's really been reserved for the knight, so that the knight can administer mate on e6. But the idea behind this is to overprotect the c-pawn, and then the next move you deliver mate here. So that perhaps is one way around it. Or is it? Not really, because unfortunately for white here, black has this move. Swinging the bishop from one side of the board to another. This becomes a bit of a feature in one or two of these problems, and this bishop covers a4 and he can't deliver checkmate. So regrettably that doesn't work. So what else is there? So we've played bishop g4 and black has played knight h3. This is a mate in 3, just remember that. So what else is there? Well, what I'll tell you is when I decided on bishop g4, before that I'd wondered, now what would we like to be able to do down this end? Well, what occurred to me is that if this c6 square were protected by another piece other than this rook, let's just say, let's put this back for a moment to exactly how it was at the beginning. And then everything will become clear. And this identifies why there are similarities between the position that cropped up in number 7 and this one. Now just imagine for a moment that you decided, well, bishop f3 would certainly cover this square, and then you could deliver mate on the next move, rook b5. That would be fine, wouldn't it? The only problem is you can't play bishop f3 on the first move because the knight would just whip it off. And so, without revealing it the first time around, what I'd recognized is if you play bishop g4, not only is it useful for bishop f5, but should this knight go here, then you draw the bishop back. Now this is very similar to the position in problem number 7, in that the bishop travels to one square and then goes back along the same diagonal but not to its original square. So as can be seen, bishop g4, knight h3, bishop f3. Now f3 is fine now because the knight is no longer there and it is controlling the c6 square. So what are we threatening? We're threatening rook b5 mate. And the knight of course still controls the pawn and nothing can attack this knight. So how does black defend against that? He can't dislodge this. To be sure, he could play this rook in here to break the chain, you might say. Then if you play rook b5, what would be rather annoying here is that black would play king c6 and this bishop would be a discovered check. So we certainly wouldn't want that. However, of course, if he played rook d5, you just whip the rook off. And that's one of our key motifs in this rook d5 mate. So that just wouldn't work. What else does black have? Well, again, it's interposing. He can stick this rook in the way. Unfortunately, stopping the bishop here, hitting c6, but unfortunately then you would have knight and f to d3 again, which, as has been demonstrated many times in the course of that video on problem number 6, is checkmate. Alternatively, if he were to play the bishop in here to block, then of course knight d6 mate, because it breaks the chain of the rook here. So that's fine as well. So the answer to this question is that there is no defense against rook b5 mate other than by interposing, and then he's caught in the other traps of knight fd3 or knight e6. There's no way around it. Or rook d5 on the move if he does that. So that is certainly the threat there, rook b5, and there is nothing here can stop rook b5. That is the next move. And like I said, there's bishop controls c6. So the problem isn't cooked. It is absolutely accurate. That is the final move in this process. And that is why bishop g4 is such a good move. The fact is, if you can be sure, it's always very difficult to be sure, but if you can be more or less sure that you have the correct key move, the first move, you know that eventually everything will fall into place. But for anyone who's been thinking about this, then that is the answer to it. And it's a pretty good one. But like I say, bishop f3 on the first move would have been ideal because it would control the square, and then there's virtually no defense to it. Because again, any of this business, and it lets in either knight e6 or knight on f to d3, so there's no real way around it. So that would have been a fantastic opening move. But of course, with the knight on g1, it's not until it moves to h3 that you can draw the bishop back. And so like I say, there are similarities here between the positions in this variation in problem 6 and the variation in problem 7. So I hope that satisfies anybody's curiosity, and it's been a pleasure bringing it to you, and we'll continue with the problems in due course. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now.